Hey guys, today we're going to talk about installing Windows updates on computers that don't have any internet access and also don't have access to a managed update server like WSUS. So I know that a lot of you are in a situation where you need to deploy updates, but the computers that you need to update are completely segregated, maybe due to some security reasons or some other reasons, but they don't have any access to the internet, they don't have access to WSUS, and they don't have access to another computer that can act as a proxy that has access to the internet. So this example is going to demonstrate cached mode and offline mode in BatchPatch, and we can actually really quickly install updates on computers that don't have any access to an update server themselves. So let's start. We have two computers that we're going to add to. Actually, let me take this back. Let's stop that for a second. The first thing that we actually need to do is on a computer that does have internet access. So this can be on a completely separate network that has internet access. We're going to launch BatchPatch. We have it running here, and we're going to enable cached mode. This is under Tools, Windows Updates, Tool Settings, Windows Updates. We're going to enable cached mode, and we're going to enable offline mode. And we're also just going to make sure that our local update cache directory, which in this case is on my F drive, has some free space. And so here, we'll just launch our F drive here location. This is our cache directory, F batch batch cache. We currently just have our batch batch executable there, but we have free space on this drive, so we're not going to have any problem. Let me go ahead and minimize that. So I've enabled cache mode and offline mode. I'm going to click OK. We can see now that these two modes are enabled by the upper right hand corner of our BatchPatch window. And so what we need to do is we need to download the Microsoft Offline Scan file. This is under the Tools menu, and we just click on this link, Download Microsoft Offline Scan file. And we can see the downloading begins. And so Microsoft provides on a monthly basis a file. The file is called WSUS scn2.cab, and that file enables you to scan for updates that are available for computers, but those computers don't need to have internet access or WSUS access in order to do the scan. Instead, they scan against this cab file, which is basically just contains all sorts of metadata about the updates that have been released that month and for previous months. So okay, our download was completed, and if I flip back over to our cache folder here, we can see our scan file there. So we're all set with that. This is about 100 megabyte in size, and we'll go ahead and minimize this. We can now close this. Alright, so now we just accomplished that on the computer that has internet access. Now, what we would do, the next step is we would need to take our BatchPatch installation over to the offline network. So if we can imagine for a second that I'm going to close BatchPatch here, and we're going to move over to our other computer that's in the offline network. And to do this, what we would have to do is we would take that cache directory here, and we're going to copy. In this case, this is a local drive, my F drive, but we would copy these files, or really this whole folder, to our to a USB drive, and we could just bring that USB drive over to the offline network. Right? That network doesn't have access to this network, so we have to get it over there some way. Typically, USB drive is going to be the way that we do that. And then we're going to go ahead and launch BatchPatch on that offline network. So that'll work. Okay. So now, if you can imagine for a second, now we're on the offline network. We've picked a computer here, and we've launched BatchPatch on it. And again, under Tools, Settings, Windows Update, we want to make sure that this folder points to the folder that we just copied over. In this case, again, since I'm not actually moving computers, I'm going to leave this directory the same. But if you were launching BatchPatch on a different computer in a different network, you'd want to make sure that this local update cache directory is either pointing to the USB drive that you just plugged in, or is at least you copied these files from the USB drive to this disconnected computer, and this directory would still need to match up. Okay, so And we again want to make sure that cache mode and offline mode are enabled, which they are. And so the next step now is, with both of these modes enabled and with our WSUS scn2.cab file already downloaded and in our cache directory, we would add the computers of our offline network that we want to update. In this case, I only have 2 computers here to test with, but in your network you could have 100 or 1,000 or whatever it is. And the next step, now we need to scan for available updates. So at this point I'm going to go to Windows Update here, and I'm going to choose Retrieve Consolidated URL List of Available Updates. Okay, and what this is going to do, let me go ahead and click on it, and I'll explain while it's running. We can see it launches this new window, and behind here we have BatchPatch. Basically what BatchPatch has just done, or is doing, is it copied that WSUS scn2 file, which we could actually see over here, copying the WSUS scan2 file from the local cache to the target working directory. So now each of these computers, this Win81 machine and this Win2012 machine, now has a copy of that WSUS scn2 file, and BatchPatch now initiates a scan to check for available updates, but it initiates that scan against that file that it just copied. So this could take a minute or longer. So we'll let it run. We can also just take a look at our local agent log here. This is basically just saying, what did BatchPatch on this computer do? And it copied our WSUS scn2.cab file, which it was located in the cache, and it copied that over to the target computers. And now we have the search running. And if we flip up, let's raise this up a little bit. This is our window where we're going to see the results. And we have a progress bar here just showing us what's happening. Okay, we've just processed a total of 32 files, and 2 hosts have been processed, so we have completion here because we had 2 hosts in our grid. So we found 7 updates on one and 2 updates on the other. We can just see what these updates are. Okay, we have a handful of updates here, and so that's now our second step is done. Now, of course, we don't have internet access on this network. That's the whole purpose of this tutorial. But we have all these files, so we need to actually save this list here, which gives us our download links where we can get these files from directly from Microsoft when we have a computer that does have internet access. So we'll save this list, and we're going to put this over, well, let's put this over here. Alright, so now what we've done is we've saved this BP URL list to our same cache directory. Okay, so now we would go ahead and we'd close this, we'd close BatchPatch, and now we have to go back to our computer that has internet access. Again, we got to download these updates from somewhere, and so we're going to do that from a computer that has internet. Again, now in my case here, I'm only working with one computer. We're just going to simulate, and we're going to pretend as if we've moved back to the computer that has no internet access, or rather that has internet access. And so from there we would launch BatchPatch again, and with cache mode and offline mode enabled, we would open our BP URL list under File Open, and we can select it. Alright, so we're back here, we got our list. Let me make this a little smaller so that it fits. Alright, now we're on a computer that has access to the internet. We have our directory for the cache directory specified here, and we're going to just download these files. And these files that get downloaded from Microsoft directly. So this will take maybe a minute or two, depending on how much data we have here. So we can see just the size of each file here. This is a 196 megabyte file. I'm on a pretty high-speed connection here, so it shouldn't take too long. And this just shows all these other files that we have queued up. And we can see the status of each file. It's just showing us the link where we're downloading from. This is the update ID. And here's the update name. And so we'll let this run for a minute. I think when we actually move to do the installation, we'll probably intentionally skip this Visual Studio 2010 service pack, really just so that we can save some time, because it's going to take it'll take some time for us to install that. And if you're wondering why we see so many different files for the service pack, we can see these are all actually different update IDs, and this really just comes down to how Microsoft packages updates for Windows Update differently, than if it were a standalone update file. If we were installing Service Pack 1 for Visual Studio 2010, it would just be a single file that we would download and we would install. But when Windows updates are being installed, the updates can be broken down into these components, and that's not uncommon. And we'll see also here that our offline scan file appears in the list. By default, BatchPatch will always just add this to the list just to make sure that we have the latest one. In this case, beforehand, since we had downloaded that scan file, we needed it in order to do our scan, so we already have the latest one, and it'll just get detected as not needing to re-download since it sees it already. You notice also here we have this update, security update for Windows Server 2012 R2, as well as the security update for Windows 8 and 8.1, and that's because we had one 8.1 computer and one 2012 computer in our offline network, and when we generated our list of updates and URLs, that list included the updates for both of those computers. And if we had run that same generate list of updates on 100 computers, we probably wouldn't have had too many more updates. We're showing 32 files here. Maybe we would have had the same number of files. It would have depended on how many operating systems we had and what varying levels of patching they were at. But generally speaking, if we had been updating our entire offline network on a regular basis, or on a somewhat regular basis, so we would assume that most of those computers, or all the computers, would be at approximately the same patch level. So we would only download in BatchPatch one file for all of the computers instead of having every computer download a separate copy of the file. Alright, so our downloads are complete. We got success everywhere except for our offline scan file. it's telling us the file already exists in the cache. And of course, if we had already downloaded these updates, which perhaps would have been a good idea before I did this demo, then they would have all just been skipped and they would have been detected as being in our cache already. So here's our cache folder, and it's showing all of our files. All right. So let's minimize that. I'm going to close this, and we don't need this open anymore either. So the next step, then now we're on the computer that has internet access. So we need to go and take these updates back to the computer that doesn't have internet access. So once again, we would take this directory of files and we would copy this over on a USB drive to our computer on the offline network, and then we would go ahead and launch BatchPatch again on that offline network computer. So again, if you can imagine for a second that we've moved over to that network and we've launched BatchPatch. And so now we're really ready to go. All the setup is done. We got all the updates that we need. We're on the offline network. We still have our WSUS SCN2 file, and we just need to now deploy these updates from this folder to those computers that are offline and don't have any other access to the internet. And the way that we do that again is we just leave cache mode and offline mode enabled. Again, you would want to confirm this wouldn't change, but you need to make sure that this directory actually points to the directory where you have your updates stored, whether that's a USB drive or whatever. And now we can go ahead and install the updates. In this case, what we'll do is we're going to choose download and install updates. So we've already downloaded the updates, yes, but the when we say download and install updates here, what we really are saying is download them to this Win81 machine and this Win2012 machine, and those machines are going to download the updates from our local cache, even though we've already downloaded them from the internet. But these machines don't have access to the internet. They're going to download them from now our cache directory. So we'll choose download and install updates. We'll say OK. So again, the first step was to copy that WSUS SCN2 file, but since we did that in the last step, BatchPatch detected that the file was already there, it was already up to date, so it didn't have to overwrite it, it just left it there, and it moved on to the next step where it's initiating the Windows update process. And now it's searching for updates here, and it's going to do that against our WSUS SCN2 file. And so what we'll do, I'll let this go for a minute or so, and then we'll kill it just so that we don't have to wait for it to complete. But just wanted to show you the entire process from start to finish. And since this is now the last step where we initiate this search, and we're going to actually deploy the updates. All right, so the search goes. Now we're copying. Here again, we're copying from the local cache, which was again the directory here. And these updates are now being copied to our target computer, in this case this Win81 machine. It's copying whatever it needs here, and if we middle click, it just shows us which update it's on. We can see here also our local agent log is showing us that we had downloaded these, but they already exist in the cache, so we got them from the cache, etc. We can bring this behind here. See, files were copied, 30 files. And I note it says 7 update found, but 30 files copied, right? That's because these updates are not just single file updates. Each of them contains multiple files for a total of 30. In particular, that Visual Studio update had a lot of different files that it contained. So now what we see is caching. Once the updates have been copied from our local cache to the remote computer, they have to be cached on that computer and put into the Windows Update directory, and that's what that caching operation was. Here, installation actually is already complete on our 2012 machine. Our Win81 machine is saying it's caching. It's going to be a little slower because the 2012 machine did not have as many updates. And I think we'll go ahead and end the video at this point because I think we get the picture here. What's going to happen is the Win81 machine is going to go through the same process where it completes caching all of these updates, and after it caches all those updates on the target machine's Windows cache directory, it will then install them all in the same step. And when we're done, we'll end up with installation complete. But I think that process is going to take some time because of the size of those updates for the Visual Studio service pack. So here we go. Now we get up to the installing portion, and we could let that go. Since this is already 20 minutes on the clock here, like I said, I'm quite sure that this is going to take a little while, especially because it's a virtual machine on a slow disk. So we'll consider it done. I think you get the picture, and thank you for joining me.